you're at home right now, I want you to take this test. Now typically I'm going to be standing, I know the camera is like right here, but what I want you to do is first test, I want you to take your hands out like this and see how close you can get them. Now if I wiggle, I can touch. Alright? That's one test. I want you to do that on both sides, and I want you to see if you have an asymmetry. So I just did this side, and you can see I can touch, but when I do this side, I'm nowhere near, okay? And I'll take a look at that later on and see how far I'm off. But I have an asymmetry. So I have had an injury in this shoulder. I've separated this shoulder. I've dislocated this shoulder. I've overthrown this shoulder. I fell on this shoulder so many times doing athletic things. And over time, I've built up some scar tissue. I've had bicep tendon problems that have leaked down into my arm. I've had all sorts of neck issues because of it. And I have to constantly be aware that I am not symmetrical both right and left. So that's one test that I think you could do at home. The correct way of doing it is actually taking your thumbs and putting them right here and making a fist, and then actually measuring the distance between one fist and the next. What we're looking for is if this was your little measuring stick and one fist came down and the other fist came up on the backside of your body there, what you want to have is one of your hand lengths in between those. So go ahead and try that both right and left and see where you line up. That's going to give us an indication of your mobility in your shoulder. If you're one hand length between the two fists, then you're cleared. You should have no problem, because that's a full expression of external rotation on the top shoulder, and then when we go here, we're internal rotation. We want to have rotation at the shoulder. We'll explain that later, but if you can do that test and be within one hand length, you have an expression of rotation in your shoulders, and you should be cleared to lift if there's no pain in that movement. If you are 1.5, so one hand and a fist away, you would be considered a yellow flag. Just a yellow flag as a coach, trainer, sports specialist, chiropractor, who's ever administering the test. If you're 1.5, then I would just pump the brakes as far as heavy lifting, and definitely watch your volume on how much you're doing in a week. Definitely be fully recovered before you lift again. And the reason for that is you have a slight movement dysfunction and you're missing a little bit of range of motion and mobility in that shoulder. Here's what I would definitely suggest to you. After you take this is called the Functional Movement Screen Shoulder Mobility Test. Once you take this, and if you had a little bit of discomfort or some grinding, what I want you to do is take your hand and I want you to place it right on your glenohumeral joint, the humeral head. So you're going to place your palm right on that joint. Your palm is going to stay down, and you're going to move right at the wrist joint, and you're going to drive this elbow up. And you're going to try and come up as high as you can, high as you can, high as you can, without taking the palm off, and then back down. If you experience pain while you do that, you test positive for a shoulder impingement test.